This was the most beautiful wife in the village, but she had one terrifying rule. If you ever light a candle while I sleep, I will vanish forever. This is the story of the broken promise. Once upon a time, in a small village called Omi, there lived a young man named Chidi. Chidi was a very kind and hard-working man. He spent his days in the hot sun, digging the earth and planting big yams. He was not rich, and his house was made of red mud and dry grass. But Chidi was happy. He would sing songs to the birds while he worked. The only thing Chidi did not have was a wife. Every time he went to the village square, he saw other men walking with their wives and laughing. Chidi felt a little bit lonely in his heart. He wanted someone to talk to when the moon came out. Suddenly, a very big storm hit the village of Omi. The wind was blowing so hard that the trees were bowing to the ground. The rain fell like stones hitting the roof. Suddenly, Chidi heard a soft knock on his door. Tap, tap, tap. He wondered who could be outside in such a terrible storm. When he opened the door, his breath left him. Standing there was a girl. She was the most beautiful girl Chidi had ever seen. Her skin was as smooth as a river stone, and her eyes were bright like the stars. She was wet from the rain, and she looked very cold. Chidi did not ask her many questions. He saw that she was shivering, so he gave her a warm cloth and some hot soup. The girl told him her name was Amara. She said she had no home and nowhere to go. Chidi, being a kind man, told her she could stay in his house. As the days went by, Chidi fell deeply in love with Amara. She was gentle and wise. But Amara had a secret. Before Chidi asked her to marry him, she sat him down under the big mango tree. She looked at him with very serious eyes and said, "Chidi, I love you too. I will marry you and make you the happiest man in the world. But you must promise me one thing. It is a very big promise. When I am sleeping at night, the room must stay completely dark. You must never, ever light a candle or a lamp to look at me while I sleep. If you see me in the light while I am dreaming, I will have to leave you, and great sadness will follow." Chidi laughed and held her hands. He thought it was a very easy promise to keep. He did not know that his own heart would one day betray him. After Chidi and Amara got married, a strange thing started to happen. Chidi's farm, which used to be small and dry, suddenly became the best farm in the whole village of Omi. His yams grew as big as small children. His corn was so sweet that birds from other villages flew miles just to taste it. Everyone was shocked. Chidi, who used to be a poor farmer, was now becoming a very rich man. He bought many cows and built a bigger house with a strong roof. He was so happy because Amara was a wonderful wife. She cooked the best soup and always had a smile for him. But in the village of Omi, people loved to talk. When someone becomes successful, others often become jealous. The men in the village began to gather under the big umbrella tree to whisper. One man named Obi, who was very greedy, said, "How can Chidi be this lucky? He was poor yesterday. Now he has more gold than the chief. And have you seen his wife? She is too beautiful to be human. No woman in our village looks like that." The other men nodded their heads. They began to wonder if Amara was using some kind of bad magic to make Chidi rich. The women of the village were also jealous. They noticed that Amara never went to the river to wash clothes like everyone else. She never got tired and her skin never stayed dusty from the farm. One day, a woman named Neka approached Amara in the market and asked her, "Amara, tell us your secret. How do you keep your skin so bright, and why does your husband's farm grow gold instead of grass?" Amara only smiled her quiet, gentle smile and said, "I only follow the rules of the heart, Neka. Hard work and a peaceful home bring many blessings." But the villagers did not like that answer. They wanted a reason to hate her. They started telling Chidi strange stories. When Chidi went to the market to sell his yams, Obi would walk up to him and say, "Chidi, my friend, are you sure your wife is a real person? I saw her walking near the forest at night talking to the trees." Chidi would get angry and tell them to stop. But the seeds of doubt were being planted in his mind. He began to think about the promise he made. Why does she want the room to stay dark, he wondered. What is she hiding in the shadows? The news of Chidi's beautiful wife and his great wealth reached the ears of the king. The king lived in a palace made of white stone and had many wives, but he was a very proud man. He wanted to see if the rumors about Amara were true. He decided to throw a very big party and invited everyone in the village. "I want to see this woman who is more beautiful than the morning sun," the king said. Chidi was excited, but also a bit worried. He told Amara about the party and she agreed to go, but she looked a little sad. On the night of the party, Amara wore a simple white dress, but she looked like a queen. When they entered the palace, the music stopped. The drummers stopped hitting their drums. Even the king stood up from his golden chair. No one had ever seen such beauty. The king was very jealous. He wanted Amara for himself. He called Chidi to the front and said, "Chidi, you are a lucky man. But tell me, how did you find such a woman? A woman like this should live in a palace, not a mud hut." The king's wise man, who was an old and wicked person, whispered to the king, "My lord, this woman is not from this world. Look at her eyes. They do not blink like ours. She has a secret. Ask the husband what she does at night." The king laughed and asked Chidi, "Does she sleep like a normal person or does she fly away into the forest?" The whole palace started to laugh. Chidi felt ashamed and embarrassed. Chidi tried to defend his wife, but the king kept joking. "If she has nothing to hide, why are there no children in your house yet? Maybe she is a spirit who eats her own luck." The words hurt Chidi deeply. He looked at Amara, but she was just standing there quietly, looking at the floor. That night, when they walked home, Chidi did not sing. He was thinking about what the king and the wise man said. He was beginning to feel like he didn't really know who he was married to. The promise of the dark room started to feel like a heavy weight on his back. Days passed and Chidi became very quiet. He stopped playing his flute and he stopped laughing with Amara. He spent more time at the village square, listening to the elders and his friends. One evening, Obi and some other men brought a small pot of palm wine to Chidi's house. They sat outside and talked. "Chidi," Obi said, "we are your friends. We want to protect you. A man must be the master of his house. How can you live with a woman you cannot see in the light of the moon?" Chidi sighed and said, "It is a promise I made to her. She said she would leave if I lit a candle." Obi laughed loudly. "Leave? Where would she go? She has no family and no home. She is tricking you. Maybe she is hiding stolen gold under her skin. Or maybe she is becoming an animal at night while you sleep. Don't you want to know the truth? Are you a man or a coward?" Chidi felt his face get hot. He did not like being called a coward. He was a strong hunter and a great farmer. Another man said, "Chidi, if she loves you, she will understand. A little light cannot hurt anyone. If she's a good woman, she will still be there in the morning. But if she's a monster, you need to know before she destroys you. Chidi looked at his big, beautiful house. He looked at his fat cows. He thought that if he knew the secret, he could have even more wealth. The greed and the pride were starting to cover his love for Amara like thick smoke covers a fire. That night, when Chidi went inside, Amara had prepared a delicious meal of pounded yam and egusi soup. She looked at him with love and said, "My husband, you look troubled. Please do not listen to the voices outside. They do not know the music of our home." Chidi just nodded and ate in silence. He felt like a stranger in his own house. When it was time to go to bed, Amara blew out the small oil lamp as she always did. The room became very dark and very still. Chidi lay there with his eyes wide open, listening to the sound of his own heart. The house was very quiet. Outside, the crickets were chirping and an owl was hooting in the distance. Amara's breathing became slow and deep. She was fast asleep. But Chidi could not sleep. His mind was spilling like a top. He kept thinking about the king's laughter and Obi's words. Is she a monster? Is she a spirit? What is the secret of the dark? He reached out his hand and felt the small wooden table beside the bed. His fingers touched a small box of matches and a white candle he had hidden there earlier that day. His hands were trembling. He remembered Amara's warning. The eyes that see me will be the eyes that lose me forever. A small voice in his head told him to stop and just go to sleep. But the curiosity was too strong. It was like a hungry animal inside him. He thought, just one little look. I will just see her face for 1 second and then I will blow it out. She will never even know I did it. He sat up slowly, trying not to make the bed creak. Chidi took a deep breath. He struck the match against the box. Shk! A small, bright flame jumped into life. The light felt very big and very scary in the dark room. He quickly lit the candle. The orange light danced on the walls. Slowly, very slowly, Chidi turned the candle toward his wife. He expected to see a monster, or a snake, or a pile of gold. But what he saw made him drop the candle on the floor in shock. Amara was not a monster. She was more beautiful than any human could be. But there was something strange. Her body was made of pure, shimmering light. She looked like she was woven from the rays of the sun and the silver of the moon. And most importantly, she was crying in her sleep. For every tear that fell from her eyes, a small piece of her body would vanish into thin air. Chidi realized that she was not a spirit who brought wealth. She was a being of light who was giving her own life to make him rich. But before he could say a word, Amara's eyes flew open. When Amara opened her eyes, the room was no longer dark. The orange light of the candle was everywhere. Amara did not scream. She did not get angry. Instead, she looked at Chidi with the saddest eyes she had ever seen. The shimmering light that made up her body began to flicker like a dying fire. "Oh, Chidi," she whispered, and her voice sounded like a fading echo. "Why could you not trust the love we had in the dark? Why did you need to bring the light of greed into our home?" Chidi just nodded and ate in silence. He felt like a stranger in his own house. He fell down on his knees and tried to blow out the candle, but it was too late. The air in the room became very cold, even though the candle was burning. Amara stood up, and Chidi saw that her feet were already disappearing. She was becoming transparent like water in a glass. "I was a daughter of the morning star. I came to earth to find one man who could love a woman for her heart and not for what his eyes could see. I chose you, Chidi, but you listened to the world instead of your own soul." Chidi fell to his knees. "Please, Amara, I am sorry. I was foolish. I wanted to show the king and the villagers that I am a big man." He reached out to grab her hand, but his fingers went right through her. It was like trying to catch smoke. Amara began to float toward the window. Outside, the wind started to howl and the sky turned a strange purple color. The village of Omi was silent, but inside Chidi's house, a great tragedy was happening. "The promise is broken, Chidi," Amara said. Her body was now so thin that he could see the wall behind her. "The wealth I gave you was a gift of my own spirit. Every gold coin was a piece of my light. Now that you have seen the source, the magic must return to the sky. Goodbye, my husband. I hope the gold you wanted so much can keep you warm at night." With a final flash of light, Amara vanished through the window, leaving Chidi alone in the dark. As soon as Amara disappeared, the house began to shake. Chidi ran outside, tripping over his own feet. He looked at his big barn where he kept his giant yams. Before his eyes, the barn started to shrink. The giant yams turned into dry brown dust that blew away in the wind. He ran to the field where his fat cows were kept. The cows gave a loud cry and turned into small grey stones. The gold coins he had hidden under his bed turned into yellow autumn leaves. By the time the sun began to rise over the village of Omi, Chidi was no longer a rich man. His beautiful house had turned back into a small mud hut with a leaking roof. His fine clothes had turned into the old, torn rags he used to wear when he was a poor farmer. Chidi sat on the ground and cried. He had lost his wife, and he had lost his riches. He had nothing left but the small burnt candle on the floor. The villagers soon woke up and came to see what had happened. They saw Chidi sitting in the dirt, surrounded by dust and stones. Obi, the greedy man, laughed. "Look at the great Chidi now. We told you his wealth was not real. We told you his wife was a witch. She has robbed him and run away." The people who used to bow to Chidi now pointed their fingers and mocked him. They did not feel sorry for him at all. Chidi did not answer them. He didn't care about the yams or the cows anymore. He realized that the greatest thing he had was Amara's love, and he had thrown it away for a match and a candle. He remembered her gentle smile and the way she sang to him. He realized that the villagers were not his friends. They were the ones who pushed him to break his promise. He stood up, ignored their laughter, and started walking toward the forest. Chidi walked for many days. He did not eat and he did not sleep. He only wanted to find Amara. He went to the place where he first found her during the storm. He called her name until his voice was hoarse. "Amara, please come back. I don't want the gold. I don't want the big house. I only want to see your face again." But the only answer he got was the sound of the wind in the trees and the monkeys chattering above. He went deep into the forbidden forest, a place where no villager dared to go. There were strange plants that moved on their own and colorful birds that spoke in human voices. One bird, a bright blue parrot, landed on a branch near Chidi. "Why do you cry, son of the earth?" the bird asked. Chidi told the bird his story. He told the bird about the candle and the broken promise. The bird tilted its head and looked at him with sad eyes. "You seek a star daughter," the bird said. "They do not live on the ground. They live in the palace of the clouds. To get there, you must climb the mountain of silence. But be warned, Chidi. Many men go there seeking wealth, but no man goes there seeking love. The mountain will try to trick you. It will show you your greatest fears and your greatest greeds. If you turn back, you will never see her again." Chidi did not hesitate. "I will climb any mountain," he said. "I will face any fear. I just want to tell her that I am sorry." The blue parrot flew ahead, showing him the way. The forest became darker and thicker. The ground was covered in thorns that scratched Chidi's legs, but he did not stop. He was determined to find the woman he had lost. He was no longer the proud man from the king's party. He was a man who knew the value of a promise. At the edge of the forest stood the mountain of silence. It was so high that the top was hidden in the clouds. There was no path, only sharp rocks and cold wind. As Chidi started to climb, the mountain began to speak to his mind. It didn't use words, but it sent him pictures. First, it showed him a pile of gold coins taller than a house. "Take this gold," the mountain seemed to say. "Take it and go back to your village. You can be the king. Everyone will bow to you." Chidi shook his head. "Gold is just yellow metal," he said aloud. "It cannot hug me. It cannot talk to me. I do not want it." He kept climbing. His hands were bleeding from the sharp rocks, but he ignored the pain. Then, the mountain showed him a vision of a beautiful woman, even more beautiful than Amara. She was holding out her hand to him. "Forget Amara," she whispered. "I will stay with you forever, and I will never ask for the dark." Chidi closed his eyes. "You are not Amara. Your beauty is a lie because it does not have her heart." The vision vanished, and the mountain became very angry. A great wind blew, trying to knock Chidi off the cliff. Thunder crashed, and the air became so cold that Chidi's breath turned to ice. But he held onto the rocks with all his strength. He crawled on his knees when he could no longer stand. Suddenly, everything became very quiet. The wind stopped, and the ice melted. Chidi had reached a small cave halfway up the mountain. Inside the cave sat an old woman. She was the same old woman from the stories the villagers told, the one who gave magic gifts to the worthy. She was sitting by a small fire, and she was holding a candle. But this candle was not burning. It was made of solid ice. The old woman looked at Chidi and smiled. She had no teeth, but her eyes were very kind. "So, the farmer who liked light has come to the mountain of silence. Do you have a match, Chidi? Do you want to see what is in the back of my cave?" Chidi sat down across from her and hung his head in shame. "No, mother," he said. "I have seen enough. I am here because I broke a heart and I want to fix it." The old woman nodded. "Curiosity is a gift when it seeks wisdom, but it is a curse when it seeks to expose others. You wanted to see the secret of the dark, and now you have the dark inside you. Amara is in the palace of the clouds, but she is no longer a woman. She has become a star again. To bring her back, you must do something very difficult. You must give up the thing that humans love the most." Chidi looked at her. "What is it? My life? I will give it." The old woman laughed. "No, not your life. You must give up your story. If Amara returns, nobody will ever know she was beautiful. To the world, she will look like a regular woman, thin and plain. And you will never be rich again. You will be a poor farmer forever, and the villagers will always laugh at you. Can you love her if she brings you no gold and no pride?" Chidi smiled for the first time in weeks. "Mother," he said, "if she is with me, I am the richest man in the world. Let them laugh. Their laughter is like dry leaves. Her voice is the only music I need." The old woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black stone. "Take this," she said. "When you reach the top of the mountain, throw this stone at the moon. If your heart is true, the moon will give you what you seek." Chidi climbed the last part of the mountain. It was the hardest part because the air was very thin and he could barely breathe. Finally, he stood on the very peak. The moon was giant and white, looking like a big silver plate in the sky. It felt so close that Chidi thought he could touch it. He held the small black stone in his hand. He thought about Amara, not her shimmering light, but the way she looked at him with kindness before he lit the candle. He threw it with all his might. It sailed through the air and hit the center of the moon. Suddenly, the moon began to glow with a brilliant gold light. A path made of stardust stretched down from the sky to the mountain top. Down the path walked a figure. It was Amara, but she did not look like the goddess of light anymore. She looked like a regular village girl. She was thin, her clothes were simple, and her face was plain. She stopped in front of Chidi. "I am no longer a star daughter, Chidi," she said. "I have no magic left. I cannot grow your yams, and I cannot make you gold. If I stay, I will just be a woman who loves you. Is that enough?" Chidi did not wait for her to finish. He ran to her and hugged her so tight that he could hear her heart beating. "It is more than enough," he sobbed. "I don't want a star. I want my wife." As they stood on the mountain, the moon faded and the sun began to rise. The stardust path vanished. Chidi and Amara were just two people standing on a cold mountain. But as they held each other, they felt a warmth that no fire could ever give. They began the long walk back down the mountain. They had no gold in their pockets, but they had a peace that the king would never understand. When Chidi and Amara walked back into the village of Omi, everyone stopped to look. But they did not bow. They did not cheer. Obi and the other men came out of their houses and laughed until they cried. "Look," Obi shouted. "Chidi went to find a spirit and came back with a bag of bones. Is this the woman you broke your house for? She is as plain as mud." The women whispered that Amara looked tired and old. The king heard they had returned and called them to the palace. He sat on his throne and looked at Amara with disgust. "Is this the beauty the world was talking about? Chidi, you are a fool. You had a goddess and now you have a servant. You are no longer allowed to be a rich man in my village. You will live in the smallest hut and pay double taxes because you wasted my time with your stories." Chidi just smiled at the king. "My lord," he said, "beauty is like the morning dew. It is gone by noon. But a heart that spares through the night is a treasure that lasts forever. You have your gold and your wives, but you are still looking for more. I have Amara, and I am finished looking." The king was so angry that he kicked them out of the palace. The villagers followed them, throwing small stones and calling them names. But when they reached their small mud hut, it didn't feel small to Chidi. Amara swept the floor, and Chidi started a small fire. They sat together in the dark, and this time, Chidi didn't want to light a candle. He sat in the shadows with his wife, and they talked until the sun came up. For the first time in his life, Chidi realized that the dark was not scary when you are with the person you loved. Years went by in the village of Omi. Chidi and Amara remained poor farmers. They worked hard from sunrise to sunset. They ate simple food and simple clothes. The villagers eventually stopped laughing because Chidi and Amara didn't seem to care. In fact, people noticed something strange. While the king was always worried about his gold being stolen, and Obi was always fighting with his wives, Chidi and Amara were always laughing. One year, a great sickness came to the village. It didn't matter if you are rich or poor. Everyone was getting sick. The king's doctors could do nothing. The gold in the palace could not buy health. But at Chidi's house, Amara knew the secrets of the forest. She had no magic, but she knew which leaves could heal and which roots could break a fever. She spent every day and every night taking care of the sick people, even the ones who had laughed at her. She went to Obi's house and saved his children. She went to the palace and saved the king's favorite wife. She asked for no money and she asked for no gold. She only asked that they be kind to one another. Slowly, the villagers began to see Amara differently. They saw that her beauty was not on her skin, but in her hands and her heart. They realized that Chidi was not a fool. He was the wisest man among them. The king called Chidi and Amara to the palace once more. This time, he did not sit on his throne. He stood up and bowed to them. "My lord," he said, "I was a blind man. I thought wealth was something you keep in a box. But you have shown me that wealth is something you give away. Amara, you are the true queen of this village." He offered them a big house and gold, but Chidi and Amara politely said no. They went back to their little hut by the forest. One evening, many years later, Chidi and Amara were sitting outside their hut. They were old now, and their hair was white like cotton. A young man from the village came to sit with them. He was a young farmer who was about to get married. "Baba Chidi," the young man asked, "tell me the secret. How have you lived so long in peace? I am afraid that my wife will see that I am not a rich man, and she will leave me." Chidi looked at Amara and smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old burnt candle, the same one from many years ago. "Son," Chidi said, "most men spend their lives trying to bring everything into the light. They want to show off their wealth, their beauty, and their power. But the most important things happen in the dark. Love is built in the quiet moments when no one is watching." He held up the candle. "I once thought I needed to see everything to believe it. I thought I needed to prove my wife's secret to the world. But I learned that a secret is just a sacred space between two people. If you try to expose it for the sake of your pride, you will lose the very thing you love. Do not look for a wife who brings you gold. Look for a wife whose presence makes you feel like gold even when you have nothing." The young man listened carefully. He looked at Amara, and for a moment, he thought he saw a spark of stardust in her eyes. He thanked them and went back to the village. Chidi and Amara sat in silence as the sun went down. The stars began to peek out from the sky, one by one. Chidi knew that Amara's sisters were watching them from above, and he knew they were happy. That night, for the first time in 50 years, Chidi lit a candle. But he didn't do it to find a secret. He did it because he wanted to see the face of the woman who had stayed by his side through everything. In the soft light of the candle, he didn't see a goddess of light, and he didn't see a plain village girl. He saw his soulmate. Her wrinkles were like a map of all the years they had spent together. Her eyes were still full of the same kindness. "I am glad I looked this time," Chidi whispered. Amara smiled and took his hand. "And I am glad I stayed," she replied. That night, as they slept, the village of Omi saw a strange sight. 2 bright stars fell from the sky and landed right on Chidi's roof. But there was no fire. Instead, a beautiful melody filled the air, a song so sweet that everyone in the village had the best dreams of their lives. In the morning, the villagers went to Chidi's hut to ask about the music. But when they opened the door, the hut was empty. There was no one there. All they found was a small pile of stardust on the bed and 2 white feathers. Chidi and Amara were gone. Some say they went back to the palace of the clouds. Others say they turned into 2 trees that grow together in the forest, their branches always hugging. But from that day on, the people of Omi never mocked the poor or the plain again. They learned that every person carries a light inside them, and if you are kind and patient, you might just be lucky enough to see it. And they always remembered the story of the man who lit a candle and lost a star only to find a soul. The story became a legend told to every child under the moon, teaching them that true beauty is a secret kept by the heart. Don't destroy your happiness trying to prove your blessings to jealous people. Trust is the only light a true home needs. Would you have lit the candle? Tell me yes or no in the comments. Subscribe to African Folk Tales by Ray for more amazing stories.